Today we got Coach Kirk Forrest, the head coach at Mechanicsburg High School. Coach, how you doing?
I'm
Maybe.
doing good, Nick. How you do today?
I'm doing good. I can't complain. We'll try to work through some of these tech issues with my lagging internet, and we'll test it and see how it goes. Um, for those who don't know who you are, do you want to kind of give a quick background of how you ended up at Mechanicsburg?
Yeah, not a problem. I actually, I was a Mechanicsburg kid. I grew up here. I was a Mechanicsburg graduate of class of 2000. Went to Wittenberg University. Played 4 years of football there. Was backup quarterback during my time there. Last 3 years, was the actual legit backup quarterback, or until my senior year, and then kind of rotated some younger kids since I was going to be gone there. Ended up graduating from Urbana University. As soon as I was done at Wittenberg, I started coaching back here at Mechanicsburg with Neil Kasner. Coach Kasner had a lot of success here at Mechanicsburg and down at Harrison and up at Greenview. He's now the principal at Greenview. But he was an assistant at Wittenberg, and then came for my senior year at Mechanicsburg. So he was kind of my mentor, guy that taught me a lot in the game of football. When I was at Wittenberg, obviously Coach Joe Fincham was there, and the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach was a guy by the name of Scott Isfording. He's now down at Ohio University, coaching quarterbacks down there. So a lot of my background, of learning the game came from Coach Kasner, who had the Wittenberg background, and you had Coach Fincham, Coach Isfording. And then I went on to be an assistant, I spent 3 years as an assistant at Mechanicsburg 40506. Had a tremendous amount of success in those years. Was offensive coordinator for 2, defensive coordinator for 1. Became the offensive coordinator at Ben Logan with my first teaching job in '07. Then '08, '09, I was the head coach down at Bloom Carroll High School, just north of Lancaster, right down there on 33. And then was able enough and lucky enough to land the job back in Mechanicsburg in 2010. I've been here ever since. So got to come back home, and I've enjoyed it, loved it, and accepted the challenge of what we had going and trying to take the next step. And we're working like crazy to get there still.
Well, that's fantastic, Coach. And I will say, from an outsider's point of view, and you talk to everybody. Like, you've done a very good job there at Mechanicsburg, building a program. And what do you kind of attribute to the success you've had there? Because we talked off air about you playing in the state semis, and kind of the run you've been on over the past couple of years. What do you kind of attribute to the success that you've developed there?
The first thing is Mechanicsburg is a football town. It has football-minded type people here. From the time Neil Kasner took over in '99, I think our statistician told us the other day we're like 176 and like 60 something, something along those lines. So Coach Kaz came in '99 and kind of rebuilt a program. Then he left after the 2005 season. Then we had a nice run through 2008 that spanned 2 more coaches. 3 more coaches all the way through 2009, I guess. And then I came back in 2010, and then that run, that era kind of hit a low point. And 2010, 11, and 12 were rough years. We weren't the most talented group, but we made up for our lack of talent by being small and had low numbers. So we really had to kind of start over. But at the end of the day, we had tough kids, and we got a tough-minded community, and that they're willing to work, and they're willing to be pushed, and they're willing to be challenged. The old chip on the shoulder type community of wanting to go out and prove we're better than somebody, I think that's here. So in 2013, we were kind of able to kick in the door and finally get to the state semifinals and get past that regional final game. And then from 2013 on, it's kind of been a heck of a run. In those 8-9 years, we've been in the regional finals or further 5 of those 8 years, 8-9 years. So it's been a good run, but I say it's just flat out the kids' toughness and the way the community thinks and the way the community respects the game of football. But that being said, we don't have a bunch of numbers. Our numbers have been low. We've been somewhere in between in that 2013 group. We joked, we called them the Dirty 30. I think we were dressing 26, 27 kids when we stepped on the field for the state semifinals up in Wapakoneta, up there. So we've had to make do with what we have, but we don't look for excuses. We just look for what we can do, and then we go out and do our best to do it. And at the end of the day, we're willing to say that we're going to show up and fight you, and then whatever happens, happens. And that, we know darn well we're not going to win every game, but we're willing to go out there and compete and to fight. And I think once kids understand that and believe in that, that they get over that fear of failure, that fear of losing, and just say, dude, as long as I go put my best foot forward and then I go fight with everything in me, then what else you want me to do? Like, it's okay.
Okay. How much have your I'll go this direction next. How much of your offensive defensive systems morphed over that 10-year period that you've been there? Obviously, your numbers are fairly low. You got to kind of adapt to what you got, but how much has they truly changed, or is it kind of small adaptations year to year?
I'd say it's been small adaptations. Yeah, there we go. A little bit of small changes throughout the years. We've based, my background, like I said, coming from Wittenberg and being, kind of educated again with football. They were a big I formation school when I was in college. Your good old power, ISO, toss, trap, counter, all those type of things. But then we were able to change with the times as we got a really athletic quarterback from 13 through 16. He's now a wrestler at Ohio State. Caleb Romero is a young man's name. He was a running back growing up through the youth leagues and junior high, and we moved him to quarterback in his 8th grade year. So we still kept all the same schemes. Where this is headed. We started doing a lot of the power read, the counter read, the tray read, the zone read, all that type stuff. And then we started getting into some more of the single wing stuff, just putting him back there himself and just running it, just using him out of some empty formations where we would put tight end wing on one side, and then we're going to put trip squeeze on the other, and we're going to find a way to get a numbers advantage somewhere, somehow. So we would use a million different formations to run the same power scheme that everybody else in the world runs, or to run the same pin pull scheme, or to run the same inside zone scheme with a kick out, whatever it may be. So we don't necessarily change up our schemes a ton. I'd say our biggest change was going from a big time power toss team to now buck sweep is probably our number one play. And we can do that 1,000 different ways. But we're going to give you a bunch of different formations and a bunch of play actions off of it to kind of dress it up so you can't overload one thing. So I'd say that's kind of the biggest way. We'll use a ton of unbalanced. So we don't try to pigeonhole ourselves formationally at all. Like we probably, if somebody broke down our film, our list of formations would probably be 20 times longer than our list of plays, I'm sure.
Now, we did talk a little about that on the phone. When you're doing formational stuff, and because I know how much you like to do that and mess with people, which is fantastic. I love formations as well. Is it more tag oriented, or is it more name of each formation? How did you approach that?
I know it's kind of a cop-out answer, but it's kind of both.
Okay.
We do name them, but each kind of formation's built out of a family. So, it might be, for example, good old I formation to us way back in the day was just Rob and Lynn. Rob is tied in and flanker to the right and split into the left. Then all of a sudden, you got Rob trips, Rob spread. And then Rob all of a sudden became Ram, and Ram, now the Y's off the ball and the Z's on the ball. And then now you have your Ram trips, Ram spread. Well, now we're going to squeeze all the receivers together. Now it's Ram, trip, squeeze. So there's a lot of tags, but it's also born out of a family that's named as well.
Okay. So
there's a little bit of both. And then you get into your unbalanced stuff, and all of a sudden you get 6, 7 tags, and you're like, what are we doing here? Like my quarterback's like, please don't make me say that. Then we just start coming up with R&L names, Rocket, Laser, Roger, Louie, whatever it may be that we're doing, just lots of R's and L's. And we'll use directional things too, like east, west. It's nothing earth shattering. It's just ways to categorize your plays and to give them a family to belong to.
Okay. Now, also going back to the buck sweep, would you consider yourself just dabbling in some like wing tee stuff and pulling stuff here and there, or have you bought into more of the system and I'm going to do a lot of it and then dabble in some other stuff since you've transferred from that I formation stuff?
Yeah, and it's probably unfair to say, I'd say basically we've added the buck sweep to the I formation schemes that we use. If you looked at us formationally, we use a lot of tight ends and wings. So people don't know what the call is because we're not, people think of spread, they think of no tight ends, they think of quarterback, 1 back, 4 receivers. And we're going to use a tight end and a wing. Sometimes, our shotgun 1 back stuff has, 1 receiver, sometimes no receivers. But if you look at the actual schemes that we're running, it's going to be buck sweep trying to be number 1. Then you're going to look at our power game. and then you're going to look at our trap game and our ISO game, and then what I call toss, is our weak side outside play. It's basically a pin pull type system. And then outside zone would probably be, in there, that's about 6-7. Something we do, though, is we have a strong side of our line and a quick side of our line. We flip our sides of the line, which I know isn't, it used to be popular more in the olden days, and people kind of got away from that. But with our low numbers, what I found is that it's really helped our kids get a ton of reps, and it's helped them learn. Is when they hear power, they know that they're either on the gap side or they're on the pull side. When they hear buck sweep, when they hear sweep, they know that they're either the play side or the back side every single time. And it's allowed us to get a ton of reps at it. Obviously, you have to learn right and left, but you're either front side or, you're either play side or back side every single time. So then it puts the onus on me as the play caller to make sure that we don't become predictable with where our strong side and quick side is lining up, to make sure that we stay balanced from that aspect of it.
Okay. I'm always curious about that. And to your point, I think the strong and quick side slowly coming back. Like, we do strong quick side. I know a couple of schools that do strong and quick side. This is actually the second school in a row I've been to that's had a strong and quick side. So I think that's trending back. I think, and part of it, to your point, I think is low numbers and increasing reps. Like, that's how you offset that, is just, simplify and just, okay, you're just always to the call, you're always away from the call, or you're on these plays. And so I think it's a simplified way. I mean, when I was at Elgin, we ran for 4,900 yards going back and forth. So.
No, absolutely. Once your kids get used to it, once you get used to it as a play caller, I think there's a lot of advantages to it, especially at the smaller school level. I think we steal so many reps just because the kids don't have to learn front side, back side. They just don't have to do it.
Now, from coaching at Mechanicsburg, a smaller school, for a while, where do you typically have your biggest depth issues, out of curiosity?
Our biggest depth issues, from my standpoint, are the skill positions. I think we do a good job when we have tougher kids that are willing to go fight and block and put their hand in the dirt and line up. And we do board drills, almost every single day in practice throughout my tenure. So everybody knows how to put their hand in the dirt and go block a man over them. But the skill difference from your first string guys to your second string guys can be absolutely enormous. So what your starting X receiver, what his capabilities might be 20 times his backup. Where, your strong tackle might be a kid who's a physically dominant kid, but the next kid that you put in there is at least going to be able to get in the way of the kid and have an idea of what he's doing. But that X receiver, that tailback, or that quarterback, those kids that are, they're technically their backups might not be in the same stratosphere as them, athletically or talent wise, when you only have 30 kids. Because by the time you take your top 13, 14 kids and you spread them so thin, that drop-off can be gigantic.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, I want to go back to buck sweep real quick. And you mentioned play action off of it. Do you do like any RPOs or any of that stuff off of it, or is it just solely like play action fakes?
Oh, no, absolutely. We definitely RPO it. And we're a team that likes to formationally try to get you the edge. We're a big add-a-gap team.
Okay.
So, our number one formation to run our buck sweep is like a trip squeeze. So we got 3 guys to the bunch, and those guys, for the most part, are all going to be just gap down type guys, and we're going to try to get both of our guards outside of them. So on the backside, a lot of times we'll put the single receiver to the field. You're not giving away any secrets. Everybody coaches against us knows this. And obviously your X receivers, usually you got a double team. So we'll put a guy out there, and we'll run sweep slant, we'll run sweep curl, we'll run sweep. We'll run a sweep with a backside tunnel screen to the one receiver, RPO'd off of it. We'll go 2 receivers tightened in on the backside, run a flat curl concept off of our sweep game that hits real quick, almost like a pop. It's basically a bubble with a quick curl that's 8 yards away from the quarterback. So it turns into a pop pass with a flat route, just a little flat curl read on the backside if you're going to play us in a 3 deep look, and kind of put your flat defender in a bad situation that way. We've had a lot of success with that over the years, a ton of success with that one. It's one of our go-to staples that, hey, when we're kind of at a loss, we can sweep you one way and flat curl you on the backside and kind of figure out where the weakness is, because you can't put people everywhere.
Okay. Now, in terms of figuring out weaknesses, how when you start looking at people, and like I said, you don't have to give away any trade secrets here. Um, when you start looking at people, what are you kind of looking for when you're breaking down somebody's defense? Is there something that you have to find or stand out? Obviously, at your level, because I've coached Division 6, Division 7 as well. Everybody's got somebody they're hiding on defense. Hell, you might be hiding two or you might, depending on the year, you might be hiding two or three. But
there's no doubt.
But
yeah,
what are you looking for?
Obviously, if we think there's a position we can attack, we will. But I'd say the number one things that when we're lining up and when we're starting to look at things is where can we get a numbers advantage, and what are your adjustments to formations? Is where can we finally get a numbers advantage? And if you're not going to give us a numbers advantage, what is the one matchup that we think we can win? Okay, we might not have 5 stud receivers, but we might have 2 or 3. So if you're not going to give us the numbers game at this side of the field, then maybe we can get a one-on-one matchup on the backside, or in the slot we can get one of our slot guys one-on-one with your safeties. And now all of a sudden we have a chance for a big play that way. But our number one thing is we're looking for a numbers advantage somewhere. I don't think we're unique in that. I think everybody's looking for numbers advantages there. And then after that is what's our best matchup in the passing game is can we get so-and-so, one-on-one with this kid? Maybe it's moving your X into the slot, or maybe whatever you got to do formationally to get that. So we try to get our best running play going one way, and then some of our best pass plays going vertical or sprint out back the other way, to try to stretch the field as thin as we can, and then try to have a double move off every one of our bread and butter pass plays so when you start jumping it and you start getting aggressive on it, here comes our home run shot. And then our other play action game is when you start getting overly aggressive to stopping the sweep or stopping whatever we're running that night, is we're going to make you commit that flat defender hardcore, and we're going to throw the ball over his head. Or if we can, God forbid, get you to roll a safety down in there hardcore, then now we're going to start the band on you. So that's kind of what we're looking for.
Okay. Now I want to add one more thing. You mentioned formations in there. How much shifting or motion do you add on top of that? Because as somebody who does tags as well, that can get a little wordy, as you kind of mentioned. So how much do you also try to incorporate that into also with your formational stuff?
Very little, to be honest. Growing up, obviously we only have so much practice time with our guys, and they've got to be special teams, defense, offense. And now I've got them learning 4 different new formations each week. That's kind of where I've drawn the line. I know some of our assistant coaches would like to use some more motions or shifts and some things like that. And I'm not necessarily against it, but we've found out through the years that we haven't invested enough time in that part yet. And when you start shifting, you start motioning, we found out that our kids tend to jump off sides a lot. So we've had some issues with that. And I get frustrated real quick, and I'm to hell with that. Let's be good at what we do and not mess with it. So it's something I've always wanted to do more of, to be honest, because I do think motioning and shifting at our level can give you some huge advantages. But at the same time, how much time are you willing to invest in it? And we have chosen other things to invest in and over that, so we haven't done much of it.
Okay. As you mentioned practice there, how do you, not everybody's experienced this, but how do you break up your practices? Because when you're talking small school ball, you got staff members that are coaching probably both sides of the ball. At least most of them are, most likely. And then at the same time, all your kids are going both ways, outside of maybe your quarterback, depending on the situation. But even then, he's probably practicing defense. So how do you structure your practice throughout the week to make sure you're getting everything in, getting good enough looks? So what does that kind of look? Do you have an offensive defensive day? Do you split them 50-50? How much time do you spend on special teams, etc.?
Throughout the week, Monday's going to be a team offense, team defense. We might do the kicking part of special teams on Monday, but it's just going to be strictly team stuff. On Monday, make sure they understand what they're doing, make sure they understand their adjustments. And then Tuesday's defensive day. And then we'll do a team offense at the end of that. And then Wednesday we flip, or Wednesday's offense, and then we'll do team defense at the end of that as well. Thursday we'll do both again, where we'll cut out some of the drills. We'll shorten it down, but we'll still be full pads. We'll still be physical. We're still going to have a good practice, that day. I know some kids that have, moved into our district that started playing for us were shocked at how we wore full pads on Thursdays and still hit each other a little bit there, which our kids are like, this is normal. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, we pride ourselves on being physical and going to work every day and making sure that we're ready to go. But I think we try to steal reps. Once again, you're going to hear me say steal reps. We're going to do a drill where we get in, and this is going to be an outside run period, which I know isn't necessarily earth shattering, but it's just going to be no huddle called, and we're going to run sweep, 10 times in a row as hard and as fast as we can. And then we're going to run our toss, what I call toss or pin pull the other way, as hard and as fast as we can. And then when we get in the team, maybe our focus that day is all inside run. It's just going to be a ton of gap scheme. So our strong side, which we usually gap to our strong side, not exclusively, but most of the time, then those kids are going to get a ton of double teams that day. On defense, we're a big zone blitz team. So we have a straight up zone blitz period before we get to team. Whatever you're going to be good at, you better spend some time at, and you better get a bunch of reps at. I mean, once again, this isn't rocket science, but I think we do a good job of stealing reps and finding a way to get as many reps as possible. We do a lot of group stuff. We don't do as much individual. That way we can get a couple coaches together, and with lower numbers, it's hard to do a bunch of individuals. So when we do group stuff, we can kind of service each other, and we can kind of take, we are big picture thinking, and then we kind of, really hammer it down to the individuals. But those individuals are stuff that we hammer all summer. So by the time we get to game week, then now all of a sudden that we're able to do what we want to do that way.
Okay. You mentioned zone blitz there, so out of curiosity, does that mean you run a lot of cover 3 behind it, or how do you try to attack people? Just sit in cover 3 or man or?
Yeah, we've been a big 3 under 3 over team.
Okay.
And we'll have our field pressure, our boundary pressure, our inside pressure, and then we'll come up with different fronts and different ways to do it, and different people doing those blitzes. So we can kind of pigeonhole, like, okay, like you're going to be a skiff player, you're going to be a low hole player, you're going to be the boundary drop in player of what we're doing that way. And then we have our 3D players, like, are you the middle third, or are you an outside third player? And then we kind of break down the details of each, and then every time a kid has to be something different, we can switch them into that group. All right, low hole guys over here, and then they have to worry about, okay, if it's 2x2, this is how our eyes work in 2x2. This is how our eyes work in 3x1. This is how our eyes work versus 2-back. So now all those low hole guys, they might be playing 4 different positions, but they all go to their low hole group real quick, and bam, they're getting low hole groups, bam, 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 bam. And then the guys that are, a skiff player over here, they're all going to go get those reps real quick. No matter where they're coming from, at the end of the day, they're in it at the same spot and have to learn the same things. So you might have a defensive end, a safety, and an inside linebacker, all in one group together working. So sometimes our coaches have individual positions, but they also have a zone blitz position of you're teaching low hole, you're teaching skiff, you're teaching deep third. And so we've done that at times, and I think that's helped us.
Okay. And I want to hit like 2 more things before we go. I wanted to get back because you said you're you are multi-formational on offense. How much does stuff like that, like being aggressive and being multi-formational and kind of trying to outnumber opponents at spots, transition to, say, special teams? Are you very basic there to maximize practice time? Or do you try to carry some of that stuff over there as more of a team philosophy?
Yeah, I think if you over the years, I don't think our pump formation's only changed once in 12 years. We find something that we believe we have the answers to and that we're good at. And then if you try to overload us, we have some built-in fakes that we can run if we choose to. But it's something we practice over and over and over again, and we're going to be good at it. Now, that doesn't mean, that we won't throw a wrinkle in here or there when we see something that we can attack. We definitely do that. But basically, we have one kick return, we have one punt team, we have one field goal extra point, and then we have our answers built off of those things to where if you overload one side or the other side, we have an answer for that. So I don't feel bad sitting here telling everybody, hey, we only got one of them. But it's kind of like that, the old school offensive formations. We only have one formation, but we feel we have every answer. Okay. And that's kind of how we are on special teams right now is that we only do this one thing, but we believe when something goes wrong, we know what the answer is. And you better be pretty good at what you're doing to take advantage of what we're doing.
Okay. And the last thing, I'm always curious about this. Because at a small school, your middle school feeder is always extremely important. How involved are you down there in terms of not necessarily the system, but being around, being in the middle school hallways? How involved? Like, how was your process to recruit the current kids that are down there and new kids to join for the high school?
Yeah. I would say throughout the school year in the recruiting process of those junior high kids, like, for example, I just met with all the sixth grade boys, in our school at one time. Like, we have one school building here in Mechanicsburg, and the junior high hallway is right below me. So, like, I emailed the sixth grade teacher, said, hey, when can I want all the sixth grade boys together and get me some FaceTime with them to have a chance to go talk to them. And thankfully I worked with great people, and they said, hey, this time would be best for us. They said, come on down at this time. We can give you a half hour to talk to them, recruit them, and try to get some information from them. And it goes great. I get to go down into the hallway, talk to them. I can see them at lunch. I can see them whenever. So therefore, it's lucky from that angle. But no matter how much FaceTime you get, no matter how much time you get to recruit them, kids still have to be willing to come out and put in the work and do the things. And in today's society, obviously we're all fighting some of the same things, all the social media stuff, all the video game stuff. There's a million TV channels to watch after school. There's a million different things that kids want to do. So you got to make sure that, they're hearing the right things. Amazing kind of some of the horror stories that kids, think and hear about junior high and high school football. Guys, like, where'd you hear that? Like, that's simply not true. Like, we're not running 100-yard sprints, guys, every day. That doesn't happen, guys. Like, I don't know who's telling you this stuff, but that's simply not true. So you kind of got to dispel as many myths as you do as you promote your program and let them know what you're actually about.
All right, coaches, anybody interested in reaching out to Coach, his contact email will be in the bio for people to reach out to. Coach is one of the smart ones and not having social media, so he's made the good life choice there and stayed away from all that. So, but if you want to reach out to Coach and kind of find more about what he does, or maybe talk to him about film or any other offense or defensive stuff, you can reach to him in the email below. Thank you again, Coach, for your time.